Hey everyone, welcome back to another project tutorial by DevCraft Projects. Today we're going to build a modern to-do list app using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This app allows you to quickly add your daily tasks, check them off once completed, and even delete them when they're no longer needed. It also remembers your tasks using local storage, so even if you refresh or reopen your browser, your list stays saved. We'll design it with a clean Glassmorphism UI, and step by step we'll bring it to life with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Alright, let's set up our project. First, I'll create a new folder on my desktop and name it To-Do List App. Inside this folder, I'll add another folder named Images. I've already downloaded the images for this project, so I'll simply drag and drop them into the Images folder, and you can download these images from the description. Now let's open this project folder in Visual Studio Code. Inside VS Code, we'll create three essential files: index.html, style.css, and script.js. These will handle our structure, styling, and functionality. Now let's start with our HTML file. Inside index.html, I'll type an exclamation mark and press enter. This quickly adds the HTML boilerplate. Next, inside the head section, I'll give a title To-Do List App. Then I'll add a favicon link so our app has a small icon in the browser tab. Then I'll link our style.css file for the styling. Now, in the body section, we'll create a main container. Inside this, we'll add a header with the title To-Do List and also place our logo image next to it. Below that, I'll create a text box section with an input field for typing tasks and a button to add them. And finally, we'll create a list container using an unordered list, where all the tasks will be displayed. At the very bottom of the body, I'll link our script.js file to connect the JavaScript. Now I'll open this file with Live Server to show you what it looks like before styling. Now let's move on to the CSS part. At the very top of our style.css, I'll also import the Poppins font. To do that, I went to the browser, searched for Poppins Google Fonts, and copied the import link that I'll paste that link at the very top of our CSS file. This will allow us to use the Poppins font throughout our project. Next, I'll reset some default styles by targeting all elements with the star selector, setting margin and padding to 0, box sizing to border box, and applying our Poppins font. Now let's style the body. I'll use Flexbox to center everything both vertically and horizontally, set the height to 100 VH, and add a background image. I'll also apply a backdrop filter, blur 8px, to give it that soft glass effect. After that, I'll style the container. This is the main card where our app will sit. I'll give it a semi-transparent white background with some blur, rounded corners, padding, and a subtle box shadow. This makes the container look like a frosted glass panel in the center of the screen. Next, let's style the header section. Inside the head class, I'll use Flexbox again to align the title and logo side by side. The text color is set to white so it's clearly visible on our dark background. For the title, I'll increase the font size to 2 rem and give it a bold weight so the heading stands out. Then, for the logo, I'll fix its size to 45 by 45 pixels and add some left margin so it doesn't stick too close to the text. Now let's move to the text box section, which contains the input field and the add button. Here, I'll use Flexbox to space them apart evenly, give it a little margin at the top, and apply a transparent white background with rounded edges. Finally, I'll add a small inner padding to make it look neat and balanced. Now let's style the input field and the add button. For the input box, I'll make it take up all the remaining space using Flex. 1. I'll remove the border and outline, set the background to transparent so it blends with our glass effect, and add some padding for spacing. The text will be white and bold so it's easy to read. For the placeholder text, I'll make it a lighter white with some transparency and set it to uppercase, giving it a modern look. Next is the add button. I'll remove the default border and outline, add some padding, and round the corners into a pill shape. The background color will be a bright coral red with white text, and I'll make the font slightly bold. I'll also add a hover effect. When you hover over the button, it darkens to a deeper red, giving a nice interactive feel. Now let's style the task list section. For the list class, I'll give it some top margin to separate it from the input box. I'll also set a maximum height of 220 pixels and add overflow Y auto, so if there are too many tasks, the list becomes scrollable instead of overflowing. Next, the list container, which is our unordered list. I'll remove the default bullet points using list style. None, set the font size to 18 pixels with a medium weight, and reset the padding. I'll also give it a relative position so we can easily position pseudo-elements later. Now for the list items themselves. Each task will have some padding on all sides, plus extra padding on the left and right to make space for icons. I'll round the corners with a 15 pixel radius, give it a semi-transparent white background with a subtle blur, and set the text color to white. This gives each task that same frosted glass look as the container. Finally, I'll add a hover effect. When you hover over a task, the background becomes slightly brighter, making it feel more interactive. Next, let's add the checkbox effect for our tasks. For each list item, I'll use the before pseudo element. This creates a small circular icon on the left side of every task. I'll set its size to 22 by 22 pixels, make it perfectly round, and use the unchecked.png image as the background. I'll also position it vertically centered with top 50% and transform. Translate Y minus 50%. Now for the checked state. When a task is marked as completed, I'll give it a line through with a red strike and change the text color to black, making it look dimmed. At the same time, the before element changes its background image from unchecked.png to checked.png, so visually it turns into a checked circle. This way, every task can easily switch between checked and unchecked with just a click. Finally, let's style the delete button that appears on each task. Inside every list item, we have a span element, but instead of writing it directly in HTML, this span will actually be added dynamically through JavaScript whenever a new task is created. I'll position it absolutely on the right side, vertically centered with top 50% and transform. Translate Y minus 50%. It will be a small circular button, 30 by 30 pixels, with a semi-transparent white background and white text. The font size is set to 20 pixels, and with line height 30 px, the times symbol will be perfectly centered. I'll also add a cursor pointer and a smooth transition. When you hover over it, the background changes to a bright red with white text, signaling that it's a delete action. Lastly, let's make the app responsive. I'll add a media query for screens up to 425 pixels wide. Here, the container will shrink to 90% width while keeping the same padding. This ensures the to-do app looks good on mobile devices as well. Now let's move on to the JavaScript to add functionality to our app. First, at the top of our script, I'll select the input box and the list container using document.querySelector. This allows us to interact with the text field where we type tasks, and the unordered list where tasks will appear. Next, let's create our main function called addTask. This function will run whenever we click the Add Task button. Inside this function, the first step is to check if the input is empty. I'll use inputbox.value.trim if it's empty. We'll show an alert saying you must write something, and return without adding anything. If there's text, we create a newly element and set its inner HTML to whatever the user typed. Then we append that list item to the list container. After that, we'll create a span element. This is our delete button, the little X icon we styled in CSS earlier. We set its content, give it a tooltip title, and append it inside the list item. Finally, we clear the input box and call a function named saveData to make sure the task is saved in local storage. Next, let's make our tasks interactive. I'll add an event listener on the entire list container. This way, we don't need to attach separate events to each item. The container will listen for clicks on any of its children. Inside this event listener, I'll check what was clicked. If the user clicks on an li element, a task, we'll toggle the checked class. This will either mark the task as completed with a line through or unmark it. And then we call saveData so the new state is saved. If the user clicks on a span element, the delete button, we'll remove its parent li from the list. Again, we call saveData to update local storage. Now let's talk about the saveData function. This simply stores the current list container's HTML inside the browser's local storage under the key data. That way, even if the user refreshes the page, the tasks aren't lost. To make this work, we also create a function called showTask. It takes whatever is stored in local storage and loads it back into the list container. And finally, we call showTask when the script runs so that if you already have saved tasks, they'll appear immediately when you open the app. Now our to-do list app is fully functional. Let's test it out. I'll type a new task in the input box and click Add Task. And as you can see, it appears instantly in the list. If I click on a task, it gets checked off with a strike through and a check icon. Clicking it again will uncheck it. On the right side of each task, there's a delete button. Clicking that removes the task from the list. And the best part, all of this is saved in the browser's local storage. So if I refresh the page or even close and reopen the browser, my tasks are still here. This is our complete modern to-do list app built with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you enjoyed this project, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to DevCraft projects, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future tutorials. Also, let me know in the comments what project you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.